bit so we get the beautiful TV in the background.
Wow.
Yeah. All right. Cool. Everything's good. And all right. So, good morning, everybody. How is everybody this morning?
Great.
Awesome. So today we are going to the U.S. state of Connecticut. I almost said Massachusetts. We already went there, but Connecticut. So by a show of hands, has anyone in here been to Connecticut? Anybody at all? No? Okay. Well, I almost went to Connecticut. I've been to Massachusetts, but not Connecticut. Yeah, these are the two siblings that often people confuse, even their own parents. So, like I almost did just now. So, you guys ready to talk about Connecticut?
Yeah.
All right. So let's talk about Connecticut. So as you see, let's start with the flag. There's a blue field over here, and you'll commonly see this what is called a seal or a coat of arms. You can almost call it an emblem as well. So you have the shield right over here, and it's surrounded by plants, and you have these grapevines right over here. And the reason why grapevines in particular is because wine was grown here. So believe me when I say this, people trusted alcohol more than their water source. Hang on a sec. So right over here on the bottom, you got this little banner. I will not try to say this out loud because it's in Latin, a language I'm not familiar with. But in translation, it means he who transplants sustains. In other words, those who work hard, those who are able to sustain what they work for, they will be able to sustain themselves in turn. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yeah.
Awesome.
What are the other things?
The yellow things? What yellow things?
The trend.
Right over here?
Wait.
Oh, I believe these are berries. I don't remember exactly. Yeah. My research did not specify what these are, so I guess you could just take it at the face value. They could very well be berries. They could be very well those plants that you see on Christmas decorations. You know what I'm talking about, right? So,
Holly.
is it holly? Yeah.
Could be Holly.
It could be, yeah. So let's move on to the next slide, shall we? Let's talk about where it's located. So it's located in the American East Coast, more specifically Northeast, and even more specifically, it is located in New England. We talked about some of the New England states, like Massachusetts, for example. We talked about Rhode Island. We talked about Vermont. We have yet to talk about Maine or New Hampshire. We'll get to that later. So right over here, this is where Connecticut is located. And like I said, we always confuse where Connecticut is because it's often confused with Massachusetts. It's much bigger neighbor to the north. So yeah, there's that. So the capital of Connecticut is Hartford, but the largest city is Bridgeport. And as far as geography is concerned, it is defined by narrow coastal lowlands and the land that rises from the central hills all the way to the low mountains to the north. And it is touched a little bit by the Appalachian Mountains to the west. And so as far as the climate is concerned, you might have heard of this. Have any of you heard of the continental climate? No? Okay. So what it basically means is that during the winter, it gets really cold and very snowy, but during the summer and spring, it gets pretty warm to hot depending on when you're located and where you're located. And it's also quite frequent as far as thunderstorms are concerned. Yeah, pretty much. Yes.
What kind of food do they have? And
We'll talk about that later. We all love that part. Have you been to Connecticut?
yeah,
Yeah? Pretty nice over there? I would love to go to Connecticut. So, yeah. So let's talk about the next slide, shall we? So let's talk about some brief history. So I'm about to explain that. So long before there were Europeans, there were what we call the Algonquin people. They lived everywhere. They lived right over here in Canada. They lived right over here in Montana, right over here in some of the Midland states. Shawnee lived right about the Kentucky, Tennessee area. And right over here, this is where you have some of the Algonquin people living over here. They lived along what straddles the line between Massachusetts Rhode Island, and New York State to be specific.
New York City, Hollywood.
No, Algonquin were never over there. They were mostly over here. They were never in the West Coast. So the reason why I bring this up is because it has a lot to do with the naming of Connecticut. And Connecticut actually comes from a very old Algonquin word, also sort of pronounced Connecticut, but the translation has been going from the original Algonquin to French. So it would have been pronounced something a little differently apart from Connecticut, but the idea being is that's where it comes from. And the name translates as beside the long tidal river. What they're referring to is this long river that goes from Massachusetts to Connecticut right over here, branches out, and then you've got, well, a little bit of New York City over there. That would form a little bit of the basis. I think from what I've learned was it would form a little bit of the basis of the Hudson River. So there you go. So when you have the first Europeans, colonists come over to North America, they settled into that area that we, like we said, that would be Connecticut, and it would not become a U.S. state until the year 1788. It was one of the first colonies to become part of the Union. So there's your little brief history. Let's talk about what Connecticut is known for, shall we? Oh yeah, before we move on, like I said, this was what Connecticut looked like on a map.
What kind of map is that?
The old map, because you have Connecticut over here, Rhode Island over here, which was claimed by somebody else, and then you had a little border right over here, which was also claimed by somebody else. Thought I'd share that little tidbit. Now let's talk about what they're known for, shall we?
Oh my God.
Look at this house. So, remember a few states back, we talked about a certain man by the name of Mark Twain? Yeah, he was largely considered the father of American literature. He wrote books like Tom Sawyer and Huckleberry Finn. Yeah. So
He's not famous.
I wouldn't be talking about him if he were not famous. So this was Mark Twain's old house. He lived here from 1878 to 1891. And the reason why he moved out here to this house was because he wanted to be closer to his publisher. Yeah. There were some movies made about Tom Sawyer. There were some movies made about Huckleberry Finn. But other than that, it was mostly just small little TV adaptations. So you couldn't see it in the movie theaters. They were mostly just made for TV. So if you turn on the TV and you switch to a certain channel, yeah, you would have seen a movie based on Mark Twain's books. So this is his house. And the funny thing about this house is it's what we have on the inside. So let's take a look at that, shall we?
Whoa.
So if you look in here, this was his private library. So all the books he literally kept was in this one room. So if you were to go to the Mark Twain house today, it's still standing, by the way, and it's left the way it was back in 1891. It still has this little table right over here. You have chairs, you have cabinets, bookshelves, some of the paintings that were put up here. And I don't know if you guys can see this. There's a tiny little garden right over here, right outside the window. This little sun area. It's not a sun room per se, but it kind of is. So there you go. He died a while back, a century ago. So yeah, this is Mark Twain's private library. So if anyone were to live back in those times, and if you wanted to find somewhere peaceful and quiet to read a book, you would go to the private library. So there's another place that I want to talk about in the Mark Twain house.
So he allowed people going in there for the private library, or it was just?
It was put up after he died.
Oh.
Yeah, it's practically a museum now. And this is this is the billiards room. So yeah, the billiards room, it is what it sounds like. It's a room where there was a billiards table. In case you're wondering, there's a difference between billiards and pool. The pool table and a billiards table are a similar size, but they have slightly different rules as far as how to play the game. So that's pretty much the difference. And the billiards room was where I guess you can say it was like his de facto office, because he wrote a lot of his works in this exact room. I'm not too sure what books he wrote, but I'm pretty sure he wrote certain famous books in this very room. And if you look right over here, you got your billiards table over here. You have a private desk. There's the entrance right over here. And right over there is a fireplace. Like I said, it gets pretty cold in Connecticut during the autumn and winter seasons. So if you're going to be in the billiards room and you don't want to freeze, so you would put in some firewood and light it up. Yeah. Oh, you could do that. Or maybe. But I would just put on the fireplace too. Yeah.
Yeah, what in your house?
Yeah. And I don't know if you guys can see this. There's a painting of Mark Twain in the background over here. Just to let you know who used to live in this house.
My train.
Nah. Mark Twain. Yep. Let's move on to the next slide, shall we? Who wants to go back to school?
Okay.
Not you.
Not you.
I want to go back to school.
I know.
Yeah.
Me too.
You want to go back to school?
I know everybody's school.
The reason why I made that little joke was because this is Yale University. So we might have talked about the Ivy League schools. They are consistent of 8 schools in that little conference. So Yale University is one of them. It is one of the most well-known schools in the entirety of this country. It is also one of the most well-known specifically in that part of the country. So I don't know. You tell me. Is this tall? That little clock tower?
Yeah, that one's tall.
Yeah. Then it's tall.
That one's huge.
If it's bigger than this building, yeah, it's tall. So anyway, Yale University, it has seen many people graduate from this school. It has seen inventors, mathematicians, scientists, future presidents, and business people. It has seen the biggest and the greatest minds come out of this school. And this school is like a lot of big schools where they have different programs from medicine, education, politics, economics, and so on and so forth. I can go down a list, but if you want to study something in those particular fields, yeah, Yale is one of those schools. So Yale University, one of the biggest schools. And it's also one of the biggest schools in New England. Let's move on to the next slide, shall we?
Yeah, good.
So, technical. So if anyone wants to study, you can go one of these libraries or study hall, I should say.
I go there.
It can get pretty crowded.
How
And
many people?
I don't know. They change the numbers every year.
A lot.
Yeah, a lot. I'm pretty sure of that. So I can tell you this much. If you are in the middle of, the time between classes, this is where you want to go to study. Catch up on your homework. Make sure that you are studying for an upcoming test. This is where you would want to go. And while it could get crowded on a good day, there's only a few people. But this is what it looks like in the height of a school year.
Whoa.
So by my estimate, this could be like well over 100 people, probably more than that. And that's just on a less busy day on the height of a school year. So there's a couple of more slides about Yale that we're going to talk about. Let's move on, shall we? This is yet another library. Now, this library is special because it keeps some of the rarest books ever made. They encompass manuscripts. They encompass private letters written by our founding fathers. They consist of books written by some of the greatest authors out there, both in the United States and outside of it.
Wow.
So if any of you are interested in reading a book that was written by your favorite author, there's a likely chance that it'll be in this library. And to give you an idea of how big this is, here's a person over here, right in this tiny little corner. So he's about like my height. This thing is, 3 stories tall.
Whoa. Whoa.
And that's just one block of this library. I don't know if you guys can see it from way over there. There are staircases leading to another level.
Wow.
That's how big their libraries are. Yeah, so if you ever want to read a book, go over there, but be careful not to get lost. It can be pretty big. It can be a maze. hmm
That's really easy.
Very easily. So, yeah. So let's move on to the next slide. And here's their mascot.
That's the mascot.
That's their mascot. A bulldog. I thought I'd throw that in there because they're a lot more than just a preparatory school where everyone dresses up all fancy. They also have a cute little mascot. Whether it's a football game, a baseball game, whether it's a soccer game, they have their little mascot out there.
What's his name?
Do I have it right here? Oh, sorry, I didn't write it down. But if anything, we could always give him a name that starts with the letter Y. Jaeger, like Chuck Yeager.
Oh, Diego.
So let's talk about sports. Let's talk about sports. So here in the Hartford Wolf Pack.
What's that dog?
That's a wolf. That's not a dog. So they're a pro ice hockey team. And to give you some numbers, they have won 1 regular season title, 4 division titles, 1 conference title, and 1 Calder Cup. Yeah, so go Hartford Wolfpack.
Whoa.
Let's move on to the next one. So we have the Connecticut Sun. These guys are from the town of Uniscable, I guess. So they're a pro baseball team, and so far, as of right now, they've only won 2 conference titles. So better luck next time, right? So I guess. Oh yeah, by the way, in case you're wondering, right down here, that's a basketball.
Wow.
I don't know if you can see the lines.
I've played soccer before.
Yeah, so have I. Let's talk about food, shall we?
Oh, yummy.
Any
Root beer.
root beer float. Yep,
That's right, gravy.
it is what it looks like.
You go get some for me.
So it's pretty common. It's a very common drink over here. It's very common in Connecticut. It's also pretty common in Rhode Island. So if you ever go to Connecticut, get yourself a root beer float, but be careful you don't get it during the winter and autumn seasons. It will be cold.
And you get chili.
Yeah. Let's talk about more food, shall we?
Yes, sir.
These are what are called steam burgers. You like that? So you guys, let me explain the difference between a steam burger versus a traditional burger. Traditional burgers will be on a grill, whether it's on a metal surface or an open fire. But what they do is they put them in what is called a steam cooker. So they have these tiny little ovens that produce steam, and the whole point of that is so that you don't really get all the fat and grease, and then you have a healthier burger. Yeah, and you have this perfectly encompassed cheese all over it. Pretty clever, right? So let's talk about more food, shall we? Hot dogs. So these are called New Englanders. So yeah. So here's the thing about New Englanders. They usually come into different varieties. You have on the middle, you have this big old pickle right over here. You have lettuce and tomato, and you got special sauces. And in some cases, you just have chopped onions with that special sauce.
Do they have cheese on it?
No. No, they don't have cheese. So yeah, when you're talking about a New Englander, you're either referring to the hot dog or someone who lives in New England. Be careful how you use this terminology.
It's a bad for your brain.
What?
I said it's bad for your brain.
No, it's just avoiding confusion is what it is. So, by a show of hands, would you try the New England in the middle? It has the big pickle.
Yes, I would.
You would? What about the one on the left?
Pickles.
I love pickles too.
What's that on the left?
It has just chopped onions and it has a special sauce all over it.
Sounds good, but depends on what the special sauce tastes like.
The special sauce is a mixture of like brown mustard and mayo, something like that. Yeah. So, and sometimes you will have what is called sauerkraut, fried onions. Yep. So, the New Englander, am I right? So, hang on a sec so I can move on to the next slide, shall we? Fried clams. Let me ask you this. Have any of you had clam chowder?
No, I do.
I do.
Just a handful? So where your clams come from? In the clam chowder.
And the ocean.
Yep. So what they would do is they would put them in an open fire, and then as soon as they open up, they break off the shells and take out the meat out.
Whoa.
So that's where you get your little, I guess you can say, quahog.
Oh,
Just another word for clam.
look at clams. Anybody eat clams?
Yeah. We all like clam because if you like clam chowder, you gotta like clam. Let's move on to the next one, shall we?
Oh, donut.
Oh yeah, this one's a little self-explanatory.
Oh, I love that.
It's a little self-explanatory. You guys like this?
Yeah, me too.
You're gonna love this. They sometimes come in squares,
Wow.
unique shapes and sizes. Sometimes some of these squares can be as big as 6 inches per side. Yep, pretty much. So, pretty sure you're gonna like this. If you go to Connecticut, let's talk about one more. Who likes ice cream? Yep. So you're gonna find these everywhere in these mom and pop shops, these small business, these little small business ice cream shops. Each ice cream is different because everywhere you go, everyone has their own recipes. So keep in mind of that. It's not Baskin Robbins, you guys. Yeah, well, this is not your regular Baskin Robbins. It's homemade at Connecticut. There. They won't give you any of that later. So let's talk about some famous people, shall we? Recognize this man?
Oh, yeah, kid.
Who's that?
My boy, your Chucky boy.
Nope.
Ah! That's boy.
Nope. So guys,
Come on, man.
this is Noah Webster.
Ah!
Do any of you know that last name, Webster? Okay, let me ask you this. Have any of you heard of the Webster Dictionary? No? You want to know what a word means. You pull out a book called the dictionary, and it has the name Webster on it. And that's how you find out what a certain word means. This is the man who wrote what will be later known as the Merriam-Webster Dictionary. So you can thank this man for compiling every single word in the English language and putting it in a single book. So if you want to know what the word, let's say, what the word table means, you pull out a dictionary, and what do you know? That's what a table is. Pretty easy, right? So it would take a lot of effort for you to study the English language just to pile it in one book. And that's what this man did. There are other dictionaries like the Oxford, the Harvard Dictionary, but everyone knows this man for the Webster's Dictionary. Yes.
What about Harry Potter book?
No. You're talking about something different.
I'm sorry. I don't know.
That's fine. So let's talk about more famous people, shall we? Oh, wait.
God.
This is the Merriam-Webster's Dictionary. Like I said, the Collegiate Dictionary.
It has a lot of words in it.
So I'm pretty sure all of you have picked up this book at one point or another, have you?
No.
Really?
You know.
These things are everywhere.
Everywhere.
They're in bookstores. They're in your regular stores. They're everywhere they sell a book.
Wow. Wow. Costa Mesa has a lot, man.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure Costa Mesa will have this book in particular. This is the most recent that they have, the 11th edition. So if you guys are looking for a definition for a certain word, you're going to find, well, Merriam-Webster. So let's talk about more famous people, shall we? Recognize these two?
Whoa.
Okay, their names are Michael J. Fox and Christopher Lloyd. You don't recognize these two?
No.
You do? Where are they from?
Connecticut.
Connecticut.
Where have you seen them?
Back to what? Back to what?
I know, back to the video.
Good job, Jenny. Back to the future.
Let's move on to the next slide. Let me show you. Recognize these movies? Yep. You like Back to the Future? Yeah. Yep. 3 movies about time travel. One is a scientist, the other is just along for the ride. Yep.
Nice.
So Christopher Lloyd, Michael J. Fox, they're from Connecticut. Yeah. You like Back to the Future? Yep. So have any of you seen these movies? And if you have, which ones did you like the most?
One.
First one?
I like them.
First one.
I like them.
And the second one. How about you? Which one was your favorite?
I like
All 3 of them? All right. That's fair.
the second one.
Second one? Yeah. Which one was your favorite? The second one? First one? Yeah. Okay. I guess everyone's favorite was the first one.
What about you?
Me? Ooh, that's a good question. Which one did I like the most? Ooh. Which one was the movie where they go to the future and then Michael J. Fox's character, he almost gets eaten by the shark hologram? Which one was that one? Yeah, that one. Because the hoverboard, let's be honest, who didn't want a hoverboard?
Yeah.
Who did not want a hoverboard when they saw the second one? I'm not going to lie. When I saw that, I was like, all right, cousins, let's go to the future.
Time is here. Yeah.
It's not even a real hoverboard. It has wheels on it still. That's not a hoverboard. It has to be off the ground.
They have the float. Yeah, they have the ones that float.
Are you sure it doesn't have a one wheel on it?
Yep.
Yep.
Okay, I'll keep an eye on them.
Thank you.
Okay, you can show me later because we got to talk about the people of Connecticut right now. So here's Connecticut on a map. Here's the city of Hartford. And where is it? Oh, here it is. Bridgeport is down here, the largest city. So like I said, the name Connecticut comes from an old French word that was a translation of the Algonquin word Connecticut, which means beside the long tidal river. This is the long tidal river. I'm too short for this. There's the long river that bisects the entirety of the state. So the most common ancestries are as the following: Italian, Irish, English, German, Polish, French, French Canadian, Scottish, and Scot-Irish. I fit nowhere in these categories.
I didn't hear any Cuban in there.
What?
I didn't hear any Cuban in there.
No. You didn't hear any Cuban in there. Okay. So I just found out yesterday that a certain Mr. Henry Michaels is Polish. I had to find out about that yesterday.
I didn't know that.
Me neither. I had to find out about that yesterday. And if Carrie were here, she's Irish and German.
I do.
Yeah, so I don't know about you guys, but I don't know. Do any of you guys fit anywhere in that category?
No.
Anyone French Canadian?
Oh, you.
How about you, Vicky?
I'm
No,
from Canada.
I'm Italian.
You're Italian. What about you, Patricia?
I'm a little bit Italian, Canadian,
Oh,
There
really?
you go.
and Yugoslavian,
Mm. Oh, wow.
There you go.
I would never have guessed that.
part Irish,
Hard Irish. Oh, my goodness.
United Nations.
Okay, yeah, you are a United Nations. So, those are your common ancestries, which I fit nowhere near. So, let's conclude today's class, shall we?
Oh, I'm from France.
So, here's your license plate. Carmen, it is expired. Your favorite part?
Oh,
Expired by a little over a decade.
yes, indeed.
So, you have your license plate. You have the map of Connecticut right up here. Right down here is the Constitution State, because if you guys remember back in school, this is where the Constitution was signed. It was where it was written. So, in conclusion, Connecticut is a small state, but it has a big heart. So, if any of you know where you're going to go, you can go to Hartford, you could go to Bridgeport, you can go back to school to Yale University.
I don't want to go there. I like to hear better.
So, let me just say that if I had to go to Connecticut, yeah, I would visit some of the big places. And no, I will not be going back to the future in those movies. Because let's be honest, if we had invented a time machine, we would have seen it already.
That's it.
So, yeah. So, thank you so much for joining me. I'll see you on the road.
Hi, Jeremy.
Bye.
Hi, Jeremy.
Bye.
Got two doors. Thank you, buddy.